that, one day I actually told my boss, I said, look, when I came here, your attrition was 50%. If I was acting like you would be, our attrition would be 100%. So allow me to, run things my way where attrition is 25%. And then I found when I became head of operations, I thought I'm going to get the opportunity to now do things my way. But then I found no, because even there, I had somebody else who was wanting to run things in their own. Point you brought up, Mariadas, because one of the aspects of DEI that we don't talk about enough is about power dynamics. You see, the decision of whether or not to have, shared bathrooms. Who's making that decision? Is it being made by the dominant group, the majority group, or is it being made by the group that needs to be included? For example, where are the LGBTQ voices being considered in that decision? The decision is probably being made by cisgender males or cisgender women, cisgender heterosexual men and women are making decisions on behalf of everybody else. So look at most DEI practitioners, they are people like you and me. We came into this field out of passion or by mistake, but we're not really qualified here. People who have come from a gender studies background, people who have come from a sociology background, they understand society, they understand power imbalance, they understand oppression and exclusion. I think my growing years have definitely shaped me. I grew up in a bunch of different places, and I also grew up in a one-parent home. My mom brought up, two kids, my younger sister and me, mechanical engineer. I want to be an automobile engineer. They have that kind of niche clarity. मेरे को गाड़ी बनाने का है, right? I am one of those people who didn't have any clarity. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much for once again tuning in to the Coachee Diaries podcast. My name is Aman Zaidi. I'm your host and also the founder of Innovita Learning. Today, it gives me immense joy and pleasure because I have a very good friend, mentor, who has come and he's going to talk to us today. The person that I'm referring to, he's the one who introduced me to what is diversity, equity, inclusion, and he's also been someone who has been helping me. He has started and scaled multiple businesses, has been working in India. He is right now in Portugal. And having said that, let's all welcome Aman. Aman, thank you so much for coming over to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Mariadas. It was really kind of you to think of me when you decided to begin your podcast. And it's always a pleasure talking to you. So I'm very glad to be here.
This had to be. In fact, I'll tell you for all the viewers who are joining in, if this is the first time and you're wondering, okay, what is Coachee Diary podcast? By profession, I am a coach, but by passion, I consider myself a coach. Right? So I am the one who's learning, and through all this conversation on the podcast, I am looking at what truly is the meaning of life, how to find that purpose, what are the lessons that we can learn from the book of life of our guest and all the people that who are going to listen. Together, how can we build a community where we can learn from each other, one chapter at a time? And Aman, by the way, when I thought of starting this podcast, you were the first person who came to my mind. Aside now that to say that it took us a little while to actually get you on the podcast, but you were the first person who came to my mind, for sure.
Well, it's good to know that you're top of mind in somebody's mind at least.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's all because of the impact that you have on people's life, and we'll talk more about it. But thank you so much for joining in. And for the audience, here's a little brief about Aman. Aman is an executive coach. He is also a TEDx speaker. He works primarily in the DEI space. He is a leadership and talent development expert. Here's the question, Aman, the same question that I asked you before you get started. These are all titles. Tags that we get along. So when someone asks me, okay, are you a coach? Yes, by profession. Okay, I know so many people who think of themselves only by the work that they do. But apart from all the titles, the labels, the tags, if your daughter had to tell us who is Aman in true sense, what would be the answer?
I think you're right. These are all the things that we do. And if you ask people who are philosophically inclined or spiritually inclined, they like to say, no, but you're not your work. I think they're right. My daughter's a teenager, and getting an answer out of her, which is very long, is unpredictable. I think I did ask her, and she gave me a kind of a 2-line answer. When I asked her, look, if you had to describe me to somebody who wanted to know the real me, not the work I do, what would you say? She said, well, I think a little bit of a scatterbrain, but somebody who has a good heart and is interested in helping other people, interested in doing good to other people. And I think that is a fairly accurate description. It doesn't describe everything because, like I said, I could only manage to get a two-line answer from her. But in both aspects, I would agree because I am a little bit of a scatterbrain. I am absent-minded, often. And so that thing is right. And the other thing that she talked about, which is that I'm primarily interested in the well-being and welfare of other people. And I want to be able to do good to them. I think she's right about that as well. So my career choices and my life choices have also been because of that. So I think that last bit is I think that last is really what my essence is because I am about wanting to do good to other people. So, yeah.
Beautiful. It's quite interesting, and I ask something similar to a lot of the guests and even my clients because the first time I meet them, I want to know, apart from what work they do or what they think of themselves, how are they being perceived by others? Like, if you had to ask something similar to my wife, I know you would obviously get amazing answers. Amazing answers for sure. She's very loving, very kind, but she sees me for who I am. Without putting on that mask, she knows me. And just because she loves me, she's going to be brutally honest with me. She'll tell me things which possibly I'm not prepared to hear. But she'll tell me because it
Yeah.
is for my own good. Sometimes I think when we do the same, when we ask our friends, wife, kids, how we come across, maybe it's time for us to reflect this. This is how I really want to be. Like in your case, this is exactly who you are. And it's like very happy that your daughter also sees you for who you are. But many people
Yeah.
don't. Sometimes people they put on a mask. In
Yeah.
office, they are someone different. At home, different. But being authentic, I think that's what we're trying to get at. Perfect.
Yeah, I was saying, no, you're right. Absolutely. I think it's very important to allow other people to see us and equally important to allow them to give us their observations and their feedback. And I think that's true in my case as well. I think my wife as well, she sees me for who I am and she's very kind, so she doesn't always say it, but once or twice a year, she will actually say, okay, this time you seem to be asking for it. So therefore, let me tell you it about yourself. Let me show you a little aspect of you that
Yes.
you may not have noticed. And I think that's very valuable. She says it, she says it in a as gentle a way as is possible. And I find it really useful. I find the gentle approach useful, but I also find the holding up of the mirror very useful because how else will we learn? Our self-awareness is derived from the world around us. And in fact, very interestingly, I came across this theory of the self, which is that the self is socially created, and it made complete sense to me because when you are around a lot of people who write self-help books or who talk about self-awareness, a lot of them would talk about reflection and journaling and all of that as methods of self-awareness. And I was always, when I used to look at that and say, okay, how much of yourself do you really know?
Right.
And when this theory, I came across it, I was like, okay, this makes complete sense because we are the product of our environment and other people see us and we respond to the way they see us.
Right.
So I think, the self is socially created. And therefore, self awareness actually also comes from speaking to the people around us, asking them for feedback, for their observations. And I think for me personally, that's a great way of developing yourself.
Wow, that is profound. I'm also going to try and incorporate some of the things here. Self is socially created. Beautiful name. Beautiful, beautiful. Now that we're talking about our self, when you see yourself, we know that you had a journey. The younger self, let's go back when you started young, working. And I was kidding about it, but when you started, I was possibly in my school, third grade. 1997 is when you started working. Yeah, I was technically in third grade back then. You have seen the world in a different lens. You have seen things which possibly I have not even read in history book. As you said, we are created, we are conditioned. What was growing up like with your friends, the surrounding that you had? How much of an impact did it have in the person you have become today? How was that journey? If you could tell us briefly.
I think I think my growing years have definitely shaped me. I grew up in a bunch of different places, and I also grew up in a one-parent home. My mom brought up, two kids, my younger sister and me, and she was a working woman. So, single parent, working mother, as well as parenting two kids. Also, she was working in fairly remote locations. So while I was born in Delhi, and when I was born, she used to run a school of her own at that time. She had to shut it down because it was on a rented premises, and there was a dispute with the landlord. The landlord kind of pushed her out of that building, so she wasn't able to continue the school. But she had that entrepreneurial spirit at that time. And then she decided to educate herself a little more. After she'd had two kids, she went and did her master's, and during that time, sister and I, we lived with our maternal grandparents, and that was in Lucknow. So we spent some time growing up there, around two of my aunts and my grandparents. And then once mom had finished, she found another job that took us to Haryana, another very small place in Haryana. Uh, Called Firozpur Jhirka. That was for a year. And after that, she found another job in Rajasthan, where she ended up working for pretty long. Both my younger sister and I, we finished our schooling from Rajasthan. But again, small place. This was the Singhania group. They had a cement factory, and the cement factory had a school, and that school needed teachers. So mom was there, and we grew up on a factory township, which is wonderful. I mean, it's a brilliant life because it's a small place, it's secure, you have the freedom to bounce around, play everywhere. You have large open spaces available to you. Eventually they built a club. We were able to play badminton in the club for you know next to free. I don't think there were any fees or anything. I think all it was called the Officers Club. Since mom was a principal at that time, she was designated as an officer, and so the Officers Club meant that kids could go and join and play. So we had access to some facilities as well. But it was a very not even a small town life. It was a township life, sheltered in many ways. And once I finished, I came to Bombay for my graduation, where my grandparents were staying at that time, and my uncle was posted. And I had to make the adaptation from small township life to big bad metro life. It wasn't difficult, actually. I think some parts of it were complicated, but I seem to have made the adaptation very quickly. And then, of course, a few years of living in Bombay, completely fell in love with the city. With what it used to be at that time in the early 90s, early to mid 90s.
Yes, yes.
And then of course I finished my graduation there. In Maharashtra again, in a place like called Jalgaon. I went and did my MBA. I came back and started working in Bombay, and it was fun. It was a load of fun.
Wow.
Those early days of living and working there. And so, as you can see, it's been a life of adapting, and adaptability has actually become one of my key strengths. It looks like, as a matter of fact, I find it very hard to conceive the concept of being settled. If somebody says, I remember when I moved from Bombay to Pune, and people say, have you settled in Pune? I'm like, settled? That question is something that I've never been able to understand. And now that I'm in Portugal, if somebody asks, are you settled here? So in my head, there is no concept of a permanent future. There's no permanency, right? Because I don't know where you're going next, right? I've always seen, I mean, the life I've seen is one where you're always moving. And I'm open to move because you have to be. You don't
Yes.
know where your next opportunity is going to come from. If somebody tells me, "Hey, Aman, there's a wonderful opportunity in Finland or New Zealand," I'm probably going to say, "Okay, the opportunity is great. Let's go." Probably not going to turn it down. You don't turn down good opportunities when you're a middle class boy or girl. You just look for the next opportunity. I
Right.
think maybe I can be settled if I have like a 25-acre farm, which is self-sustaining at some point in the future. But at this time, I don't know. So that's a little bit about my journey. I mean, I don't know what aspect you want me to focus on. If there is an aspect you want me to focus on, tell me.
No, I think whatever you have said so far. So, one of the things that's happening to me is learning a lot of life lessons from all the guests that are coming on to the podcast. I knew you, and I have spoken to you a couple of times, even on phone. So, I think many people might know you from your LinkedIn. So, there's just one connection that they have, and that connection is Aman. That is how even I started. But then the more we started speaking, I started feeling that sort of actual real connection. That okay, is someone I can reach out to if I need some sort of guidance. Today, this entire story is something I've never heard, and possibly people who would be watching this, they have never heard this part of a story, and it's beautiful by the way. And especially two things, something a little bit of prejudice, but of all the places that you have been so far, which is your favorite? Something that you can call home?
That's always been a difficult question for me to answer, Mariadas, because encountered this difficulty when I was asked when I was younger, in probably my late teens, early 20s, if I was asked, Aman, what's your favorite song? And I'm like, what? I always had a favorite singer. Like for me, it was Kishore Kumar. So I could say I can tell you who my favorite singer is, but I find it very hard to zero in on one song that is my favorite. I may have top 5 or top 10, like Sri Kumar has maybe a top 10 list of favorite songs. One is hard. Similarly with the place,
Maybe a top
it's
three
come.
then.
Yeah,
Makes it easier.
that's probably easier. I used to have a favorite place when I was growing up in Rajasthan on that township. It was called JK Puram. It's in a district called Sirohi, which is towards the south of Rajasthan. It used to be my favorite place, but partly because all my friends were there and I had such great experiences growing up there. Then, of course, I moved to Bombay, and after a while, Bombay became my favorite place, and I would say that, oh God, there's no place like Bombay in India. And then I moved to Pune and I realized that in Bombay I was living in matchboxes, and in Pune each home had 3 balconies. So, Bombay quickly was no longer the best place in the world. So as I have gone from one place to the other, as my perspective has shifted, some people look at it as a loss of loyalty. Oh, God, you're not loyal to Bombay anymore. I'm like, no, I don't think it's a question of loyalty. I just know there's something better available now. So, those were two former favorites, which, and I think Goa, while I've never really lived there, is another place. So if people would ask me, Aman, where you from? As you can imagine, I didn't have an answer to that because I used to, when people would say, Aman, where you from? My answer used to be, do you have the time? Because I'm going to have to take you through the entire story. But then sometimes I would answer, I say, I don't know if I can tell you where I'm from, but I can tell you from where I want to be. And then they'd be like, where do you want to be from? And say, I want to be from Goa. I'd love it if my grandparents had a home somewhere in Vagator overlooking the sea. That would have been nice. So I think, yeah, Goa used to be a place that I really loved.
I'm assuming that when you went to Goa, possibly with your friends, you have a different experience altogether, and the first time is always mesmerizing. And if you're going obviously for a corporate event, yes, it's fun. But if you're going around with people you love, you with friends, it's a different ballgame altogether. And I'm hoping that you had a very good experience in Goa, especially with friends. Because I'll be really honest, my friends, we usually make plans to go to Goa, and a day prior to the actual, us meeting and leaving, for some reason people just have headache. Their moms don't let them go, and their boss is just canceling their leaves, and that is what's happening.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I've actually been to Goa, like you said, with a variety of groups. I've been there for work to facilitate offsites and workshops, and I've also been there with friends. The first time I ever went there was with some work friends from Intellinet. And then, of course, I used to go at one time, I used to go every year with my family and with my best friend from college and his family. So we used to, both of our families would meet in Goa for about 4 days and we'd spend some time. And that was good because I discovered a group of people who were content to stay in one place. There are two kinds of travelers. There's this traveler who thinks that life is short and you must see everything in one day. And then that doesn't become a holiday, it becomes a chore, right? You're constantly jaded at the end of the day saying, oh God, I've been to 7 places in one day. And I'm not like that kind of vacationer. To me, the idea of a holiday is a holiday, beach, hammock stationary for the entire vacation. I'm not going anywhere. So I've taken holidays like that. Just go to a place, park yourself there, possibly in a place where there's no network either, and just take in the place, take in the beach, take in the stream, take in the you know the breeze, and just enjoy yourself. And I think my family and this friend and his family, they were okay with that kind of a holiday. They didn't want to see too many things, and that used to be a wonderful holiday.
Amazing. And I'm hoping that I am also someone very similar. I would like to go to places, explore new places, but not everything. You go, like, I've been to Manali. Okay, I know Manali. Now there's people tell me that oh, we never been to old Manali. I just been to Manali. There's nothing like old or new. Everything there is new to me. But yeah, people have pretty much like to just be in one place, explore, enjoy, relax, come back from the vacation.
Yeah.
Now, the second aspect of what I hear from your story is you said you are someone who's not in your mind that there's nothing that that's permanent. So there's not permanent address for you. And I also have something very similar, or at least on that line. Especially now that I've been born and brought up in Mumbai all life, but recently we had to make that choice to come to Ahmedabad. And when I was here, we started thinking, okay, so before we could get a place of our own, we said we'll look at something which is a rented apartment. And then, especially from the time I'm thinking about the podcast, there's a constant thought in my mind that, hey, you know what? Even if I buy a place and call it home, call it my land, it's not really mine. Once I die, it's going to someone else. It's not technically mine.
Yeah.
I'm more of a custodian. I'm here for a certain time. So all those sort of questioning, nothing permanent. I'm here for a certain time. I do my job. I learn my lessons, and then obviously need to go on to a new place.
Yeah.
Do you think about things in that aspect also sometimes?
I think so, Maridas. I've never really been attached to the idea of owning things. I find it very strange to hang on to something and say this is mine. I find it kind of childish as well because, when children fight saying, no, this is mine. This toy is mine. This bat is mine. This shirt is mine. When I was a kid, my sister and I would sometimes quarrel because she would wear my shirt and I'd get really pissed with her. And you're saying, why have you worn my shirt? And so mom asked me to put it on, so I put it on. Then I'd fight with my mom. Kid, no brains at that time. Now I notice that if my daughter walks up and says, Dad, I don't have anything to wear. She's as tall as me. So I just say, go to my almari, pick out something that you want. It's like that. And yeah, I find the concept of ownership a little strange. I think even sociologically or socio-politically, there are commentators who have said that the concept of ownership is problematic because your ownership comes at the cost of somebody else's deprivation. So, for example, if you own 20 acres, like I was talking about, probably depriving 40 people of their right to having land, and it's a very interesting thing.
I never thought about this.
Well, if you're interested, there's a guy, I haven't read too much about him. I think a French anarchist. I think his last name is Proudhon. And he said something very provocative. He said, property is theft. So you can look it up if you're looking for the extremely opposite view, the opposite to the mainstream view that we are fed, which is right to property, right? I mean, right to whose property?
One thing, just to add to this, I understand that while we're trying to have all this possession, hold on to it, especially at the end of the day, obviously we need shelter, basic need, but having four walls around you to protect you from what's outside, rain, heat, and that doesn't really give you some sort of meaning and fulfillment. What really does is being at peace, and especially if you have laughter, joy, love, when you have family, that is what makes that four walls a home. And hence, my question was, any place that where you felt home, and I am assuming that it's all because you had people like you rightly said, your family and your friend's family came together every year in Goa. That is what makes you feel wanting to be there.
Yeah, you're right. I've been fortunate in the sense that I've never really needed to live alone. Wherever I've lived with family. First, it was my mom's, the house my mom provided. And then later on, even if it's a rented place, it is a place where the entire family was. And we kind of spent time there together. We ate meals together, slept together, had birthday parties there together. So that is a home. It may not be owned by you, but by virtue of the fact that you're leading a life there, you are, you feel safe and comfortable and connected in that
Right.
space.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Quite an interesting question coming your way. Now, as we're talking about all this thing, what I'm thinking in my mind is you started your journey quite young. Maybe because you said, hey, you know what, I'm studying and I want to possibly not put a load on mom or don't want to really bother asking for money. Maybe I should start earning. Maybe that's what happened. But I see that you started young or at least early. And along the way, the Aman that you become today, it's been a long journey. So one of the things I said, okay, executive coach, talking about DEI at TEDx. Has any of this possibly boosted your career? How did this even happen? Were you invited by someone to say, hey, you know what, you should try coaching, or possibly, hey, why don't we talk about DEI? How did that happen?
I think it's an interesting question, Mariadas, and it is in a way related to that earlier question that you had asked, about my growing years and the adaptability, and that not being attached to any permanence. When I started out in my career, I think with like a lot of people, there are some people who have a lot of clarity when they begin their career. They know, I want to be an engineer. I want to be a mechanical engineer. I want to be an automobile engineer. They have that kind of niche clarity. मेरे को गाड़ी बनाने का है, right? I am one of those people who didn't have any clarity. So I finished my graduation and I was thinking of, I studied zoology. I was thinking of studying genetics after that. But because I was in Bombay, the commercial capital of India, where so many people tend to worship money and glamour, and commerce is the stream that most people tend to choose instead of arts or science. My friends would say, are you crazy? Who studies genetics? Scientists. I said, but I have no head for numbers. I don't understand anything about math or commerce, etc. They say, okay, then you do an MBA in marketing. That's the next best field. All the glitz and glamour and all these big MNCs are there. And I said, okay, that seems to be guidance. And I spoke to a few other people about it. Obviously, I spoke to my friend's elder brother who used to work for a big multinational as the marketing manager. He told me, yeah, do your MBA in marketing. It's a great line and all of that stuff. I said, okay, I've spoken to somebody who's in the working world, spoke to a few other people. So they were saying computers, is something you should consider. In fact, in between, I joined a course at NIT as well. And then I realized that I did not want a job stuck behind a desk. I wanted to be in a job that allowed me to work with people and have conversations with them, etc. And then I figured, okay, MBA in marketing, and I did that. And I started working initially, and since it wasn't an IIM kind of an MBA, my first roles were more sales than marketing. And I did that for a while, and I realized, okay, I'm not really breaking into the kind of marketing I hoped I would be doing. I'm not working on brand, and I'm all the things that the glamorous stuff that was pitched to me initially, and I was looking for something else to do. And around that time, the BPO business was growing. One of my former, India was fast becoming a BPO hub in the early 2000s. And one of my former colleagues had worked in the BPO world before, and he's gone back there. And he said, "Come over, Aman. You probably enjoy it." So I joined this company called Epicenter at that time for a bit, and I worked for Epicenter. And then I figured out quickly at Epicenter. It was hard. I joined as a team leader. I had to manage a bunch of people. My first role managing people was extremely tough because I was taking over a team from somebody else, and they were used to a particular style of working. This manager had let them do whatever they wanted, and I had come in and I was trying to get them to do what needed to be done, and they were not used to that at all. It was really hard to make that transition, and that project got shut down, and I was moved to another project, and I said, okay, I have to do it differently this time around. So because I'd learned my lessons around how difficult it was to bring a team back once they had gotten used to not being managed properly. So I tweaked a few things with my new team, and And I had an excellent team after that. I had a very disciplined team. They were a bunch of ruffians. My boss was saying, how do you manage to keep such a bunch of ruffians in line? And I said, well, I actually don't manage. They manage themselves. I just set some boundaries and, some expectations very clearly. And they knew that, okay, these are the boundaries, these are the consequences, and we need to play within this. And once they knew that, they were very happy to manage themselves within that. And I figured that I was probably good at managing people. That's where I discovered that I was a decent manager. I was getting good feedback in that space. And then I continued to work. I moved to Intelenet. I did well as a team leader there. They moved me to an assistant manager. My team size grew from 12 to 70 people, 6 teams. And then I quit. I found another job. I went to Infosys BPO eventually. My team size was some 300 people there. I kept growing through that journey. And I was very excited about it as well. Eventually, I made it to head of operations. Large team. I had about 600 people and multiple teams and managers and everybody rolling into me. And I had thought that by the time I get to this level, uh, I will actually have quite a lot of say in the way I run things. But I quickly discovered that no matter how senior you become, you're always going to have a boss, and your bosses, even if you're a CEO, you have a board to report to.
Right.
And I realized that the way I wanted to run things was at variance from the way they were wanting to run things. My focus was always on the people, and I wanted to focus on developing the people and motivating them so that they would deliver well. But I was constantly finding myself in places where things were being run in a really harsh way. I was walking into projects where attrition was 50%. After
50%.
I'd come in, yeah, they would lose half their workforce, in a year. And after I'd come in, the attrition would fall to 25%. I'd run things in a way where, people felt heard, listened to, etc. And my boss would come and tell me, you're too nice to your people. And I got tired of hearing that. One day I actually told my boss, I said, look, when I came here, your attrition was 50%. If I was acting like you would be, our attrition would be 100%. So allow me to, run things my way where attrition is 25%. And then I found when I became head of operations, I thought I'm going to get the opportunity to now do things my way. But then I found no, because even there, I had somebody else who was wanting to run things in their own way. And my role was I was being forced to look not at people's development and well-being. I was being expected more to do metric management, deadline management, more customer relationship management than actually helping the project do better. So I said, okay, I've got to get out of this. I have to start working in an area where it allows me to do what I want to do. And I asked myself some questions, saying, okay, if you do want to, don't want to do this, what do you want? And I realized that process of asking myself questions the way you are, it allowed me to peel layers away. And I
Yes.
realized that I wanted to basically work with people. And what did I want to do with people? I wanted to help them. Exactly what my daughter's talking about, exactly what I know about myself, right? I wanted to be in a position that was helping people more than helping bottom lines or more than helping balance sheets. And that's when I said, okay, if my interest is in helping people, I must move into a role that allows me to, develop them, help them build their careers. And that's when I moved into, L&D and OD. And that's what led me to do, coaching and career transformation and leadership development and all of this stuff. And along the journey, then slowly I discovered the things that I was attracted to. Because you asked me earlier, who I really am. One of the things that is really dear to me, Mariadas, is fairness or equality. I find that I get really triggered when I see somebody being treated in an unequal way. If I'm standing at a roadside tea stall, and if there's a little boy working there and the owner slaps the little boy on the head saying theek se kaam kar, work properly, it really agitates me. And I actually tell the person, if I can't help myself, there are times that I can't, and I actually tell them saying, don't hit him, right? And they look at me annoyed saying it's none of your business. But I want to make it my business because, we want to build a better world. And so, I noticed that about myself. And when I started to notice the lack of fairness and equality in the corporate world, in hiring, in promotions, in all of that, and then I developed I had an interest in that field, and I discovered that there was this growing field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I said, I want in on this. I really want to understand this. And I started taking an interest in it. I eventually did a course in there, and I started talking about it. And people started to notice my interest and passion in the field. And I started to get work as a result of that. And then through doing the work for, people like your organization and others, I discovered that I was learning more. The questions that people like you were asking in the workshops was making me think harder about the field. And I found myself developing, uh, more and more skill in the area. And yeah, I mean, that's how it happened really. So it's just a series of, essentially, if you look at it, just following who I really was, allowing my interests and passions to guide me, and they took me where I am today.
This is. I was just listening to it. I didn't even want to just stop you speaking because it's like so much of wisdom that you are sharing. From everything that you've said so far about your journey, I think one of the takeaway for me is that anyone, not just me, all the viewers also, what we need to do is we need to firstly understand what are our core values for you. Fairness, it would be a core value. Helping others is a core value. Now, I keep telling this to my participants in my training session that if I wanted to be a politician, would I make a good politician? Absolutely no. Why? Because in that role, I might be required to do certain things, manipulate and say things in a certain, because that's what is required. But it's all against my core values. Now, I know a lot of organizations that I work, they have certain core values. Many a time it is just on paper, or sometimes it's also pasted on a wall as core values. You don't see that in the people, and unless the core values are not lived by the employees, it is of no use. But on an individual basis, also, if someone wants to get on a journey like you, I think where we need to start is firstly understanding what are our core values, what are we really good at, and what are really passionate, and maybe just do that. As you said, one thing led to another, and then another, and this is where you have come a long way. But it's only because you have been wanting to help people right from the start. You value equality and fairness. Brilliant. What prompted you to go to Portugal? Quite interested to ask. You have started your own venture there, and I noticed that apart from DEI, apart from coaching, you are now also very keen in experiential learning. Tell us a little more about it.
First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to give such lengthy and long-winded answers. I realized, towards the end of my previous answer, saying I have gone on for really long.
The viewers here who are finding value, I know that there are people who's going to be watching the entire episode word by word. For people who actually see the value in it, but for those people who are not going to, for a couple of earlier episodes, there were people who just came, okay, exit. But it's not going to feel alright.
My teacher of experiential education, he actually says whoever comes are probably the ones who are most interested, and that's it. Our job is to add value to those people who show up. So good. Whoever comes and is interested, sure. But to answer your question about what made Portugal happen, I think it is that sense of adventure. It is acting on the desires that I have, whether it is wanting to do different work and acting on it, whether it was wanting to get into a new niche because I was interested. It is a question of chasing down my interests. I had been thinking for some time about living and working abroad. Also, because I found that I was being asked to do some work around cultural diversity. I thought it'll be interesting to talk about this from a lived perspective as well, not just from a theoretical perspective. And I thought that working abroad and living abroad would actually, good idea, because it will tell me practically what is it that takes to settle down in a new culture, in a new geography, work with people there, and then talk about it. So when now that I've lived here for 14 months, if I have infinitely more material, more stories, more examples to talk about when I'm doing a workshop next on let's say cross culture or the geographic diversity and things like that. So I think that was also part of the motivation. And yeah, that's how it happened. I chased it down. I had a lot of support from my wife. She's because uprooting us and from a fairly settled life where you have your customers who are sending you work without you doing any outbound sales, from living in a place where you have friends and family and all that, to be willing to do this. I mean, I have this sense of adventure, and for her to support it was really nice. I think must acknowledge that. That's how that happened.
I actually thought that possibly you got the offer that, hey, you know what, Aman, come to Portugal, 25 acres of farm. That was not the reason, not the motivation.
No, 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 not yet. Hopefully one day.
It's on the cards.
So you asked about the experiential education piece. The
Yes.
way that happened, Maryadas, was when I started doing L&D 15 years ago. When I started doing L&D 15 years ago, I wanted to learn about this field. Obviously, my qualification was not in how to make learning happen or what's the most effective way of learning happen. I didn't know the science. I didn't know the psychological or the neurological or the cognitive or the social emotional aspects of learning. And I was looking for that. And when I was trying to talk to people in this field, my seniors in this field, people who had been here longer than me, 5 years longer than me, 10 years longer than me, 20 years longer than me, very interestingly, I found that nobody knew that. Their answers were, you don't need to know that. You just need to feel it. It'll come to you in the moment. Just open yourself up and the universe will tell you where to go. And I was
Yeah.
interesting ways of saying I don't have a clue. And so I was trying to do a little bit of reading about it myself, and I wasn't able to piece it all together. And then one of my friends, he recommended to me that there's this course run by this gentleman called Vishwas Parchure in Pune, where we live. She said you should consider joining his course. I said, okay, why don't I do that? I'd done a few courses before that. I'd done an introduction to psychology, transactional analysis 101. I'd done something else, train the trainer, program, certification there. It had added some value, but not what I was looking for. And then I went to Vishwas's course, interesting course, 18 days long, spread over 9 months, one weekend a month kind of a program. And that's where I'd heard the term experiential education before, but many people who would explain it to me, they would say activity-based learning. Like, okay, activity-based learning, मतलब activity कराओ और उससे उन लोग सीखेगा. Like, हाँ, maybe तो कुछ नहीं. But Vishwas had been doing experiential ed for nearly 2 decades, and he had been exposed to some of the teachers in this field, some of the greats in this field who were based in the UK, Wales, Scotland, US, and he had collated all of his wisdom into a course eventually. And that was the course. He was able to explain various aspects of this field, and he did it really well. I was able to understand, and he was willing to give time. So I had a million questions, and he would say, "मैं time नहीं है, घर पे आओ." So then I would end the course, and I'd end up at his house, and I'd pick his brain, and he would get frustrated with the questions, but he would breathe and answer. And so, yeah, I think that is what led me to it. So in a nutshell, if you ask me what is experiential ed, it is acknowledging that we learn through our experiences, and actually we learn best through our experiences. So experiences we are all having, but it's not necessary that we are learning from those experiences. And an experiential educator's job is to ensure that the experience your participants are having is actually leading to some kind of learning for them. What happens sometimes is you will find that people conduct an activity and they leave it after the activity, which means you've had an experience, but you may not have had any learning. If you have, nobody knows what it is. It may be subconscious, it may be conscious in the person's mind, and it may be very different from what you hoped it would be. So an experiential educator's job is really to know what the participants need to learn, create an experience that can allow them to have an experience which will help them learn that thing. So for example, if I want participants to learn about change or innovation, the activity that I must choose or design should be one that allows for them to experience change or experience innovation. It's not just a randomly picked activity. And then it's about having debrief conversations after that, which are also focused around the process of change and dealing with it, or innovation. At the end of that workshop, participants have had an opportunity to experience change, discuss it, and then also talk about, okay, when I encounter this at work, how should I handle it? And obviously, that's very useful as opposed to 17 slides on 9 steps of change, 8 steps of Cotter's model, because that's just steps on a slide.
Just
It
theory,
doesn't
just
tell
theory.
you
Yeah, yeah.
how to go through it. Really.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Quite interesting. Now that you are, and thank you so much. I also have heard about this term, but now that talking about it makes so much of sense because in my trainings, do have activities, do have debrief, but I never really thought about if I. One of the things that happens is I have a certain vision for the activity. Even if it's on a slide, I have the instruction, what
Yeah.
is expected, what participants are supposed to do, and obviously through the debrief, we are talking about okay, this was what we were expecting.
Yeah.
Is the same understanding. But I have seen many times it is not. For example, I remember giving an activity to a bunch of participants where I told them your activity is supposed to be I give you a balloon and I give you a toothpick and you have to save your balloon. That's the only instruction. And in that room full of people, the minute someone bursts someone else's balloon, everyone is trying to do the same. After a minute or so, I'm asking, okay, whose balloon is still intact? And hardly there is no one. And then my question is, okay, my instructions were save your balloon. I never said use the toothpick to burst someone else's balloon. Why did it even start in the first place?
Yeah.
That is my intention. But I have obviously participants being participants, they are like, oh, but this is what we understood from your activity. This was maybe what you said, but this is what our understanding is. And everyone might have different understanding, different learning.
Yeah.
But I think experiential learning should be focused on what the collective outcome would be.
Yeah. And in a course like Vishwas's, he will help you process what happens, there. So when you actually ask people that question, saying my instruction was save your balloon, what made you use the toothpick? He would actually ask that question. What made you use the toothpick? We just assume, saying, okay, you assumed. Is there any reason why you assumed that? And he helps participants reflect on that, saying, why did I do it? Do I do things without thinking? Saying I didn't really think about it, and then say, okay. And then he'll ask the next question after that, saying, does it happen at work where you do things without thinking just because it's there? We tend to do things because they've
Because
always been done that way. Why do we do that? And it brings forward some of the behavior that we demonstrate at work, which is that we blindly follow stuff. Yeah, I mean, we follow authority. We follow what the uh, and then say, what does it affect something? Yes, sometimes we waste time, sometimes we spoil somebody else's work by pricking their balloon. So the conversation around why did you make this choice, what consequences did it lead to, are you happy with those consequences, what would you like to do differently next time, and then give them another activity similar to that, and then see if they act differently. And then the next conversation is, okay, what did it take for you to act differently?
amazing.
That's experiential ed at its finest.
It's absolutely brilliant. I think while I do a lot of my coaching, these are similar questions that I would ask. But with experiential learning, it's designed for the entire group, and then obviously a follow-up in terms of one-on-one or possibly group coaching where we ask all these sort of questions. Then we've also been working apart from coaching. I've also been working with DEI, and I have this burning question in my heart that I wanted to ask. DEI in India versus where you are, or possibly because you have connections for the rest of the world. What are some of the things which are really different?
That's a very interesting question. DEI in India is nascent as compared to its evolution in the UK and in the USA. In the UK and the USA, they are willing to address really sticky problems such as racism. In India, people are very, very scared of touching upon issues such as casteism. In the USA, people are boldly, or were at least boldly, talking about racism, and then need to root it out from organizations and society and all of that stuff. I think in India, I noticed that there is fear in talking about casteism and rooting it out from organizations and society, or even acknowledging that it exists. I think that's one difference in evolution, that in India, at least, we are not talking about some of the systemic problems that exist around inequality. However, I'm also noticing that there's a lot of exposure through multinational organizations that operate in India, because the global multinational has put down a few guidelines, whether they are they may be headquartered in France, they may be headquartered in Japan, they may be headquartered in the UK or the USA, and they want all their subsidiaries in every region to follow the DEI policy, which means that you must start thinking about inclusion, which is around LGBTQ plus, which is around disability, which is around race, etc. And as a result of that, at least in these kind of organizations, there is greater awareness in India, and here as well. So organizations that are multinational here will have that kind of focus because the global headquarters are pushing for it. And obviously, regional firms that have grown from small, medium enterprises into bigger ones, they are still a little behind on that journey, and they are still learning, which is not to say they don't have an inclusive attitude or approach. They want to, they may just not know how to go about it, and that's where they may actually need DEI professionals like us to, help them build awareness and create their policies, articulate their DEI vision, and then build the steps to follow it.
It's
So
very
I think
interesting.
that's what.
One of the reason I asked this is I know that the DEI movement in India, or as it is also known as DEIB, for belonging, and many people are talking about it. There are professionals who are advocating for it, especially MNCs. They conduct a lot of sessions, awareness. I will not name this person, but quite interesting conversation that I had. I was asking him why in your organization you are not hiding people from the LGBTQ plus community. And the response surprised me. He said the reason for that is because logistic. That is the thing. He said logistic is like, where do I put a washroom for them? Because right now, would my male staff be okay for someone from that community to come and walk in? Would my female staff be okay if they have to share the washroom with them? And they are like, it is the people who are not okay with it. I could obviously see through that. And somewhere I knew that it is because this person has a deep rooted mindset belief, and he is not really cool with that entire idea of having people from LGBTQ plus community in his work, his big workforce. So,
Yeah.
is this something still you find common when you're working with DEI here in India as well as elsewhere also? Any sort of
It's a very interesting point you brought up, Mariadas, because one of the aspects of DEI that we don't talk about enough is about power dynamics. You see, the decision of whether or not to have, shared bathrooms, who's making that decision? Is it being made by the dominant group, the majority group, or is it being made by the group that needs to be included? For example, where are the LGBTQ voices being considered in that decision? The decision is probably being made by cisgender males or cisgender women, cisgender heterosexual men and women are making decisions on behalf of everybody else. So there's a clear, I mean, as these groups are concerned, there's a difference in power. One group has the say or power, the other does not. This is what we don't talk about. Saying, look, you have an unequal distribution of power, and that unequal distribution of power is allowing you to create systems that are unequal. If they had as much power as you did, the decision would not be up to you. I think we have a little bit of a technical glitch. I'm seeing there you are.
I think it's just something with the phone, nothing else. I'll just put it on back on.
Yeah, let's sort it out.
Continue.
Yeah. And we're back. Yeah. So I think, this is what we don't talk about when we're trying to build awareness around DEI, around what we need to do in order to create a workplace that is more equitable and inclusive, with leadership, with the people who are responsible, and with everybody else. They need to understand that they are in positions of power, comparatively more power than others, and that's why others have been excluded. And you can't keep all the power for yourself and say, I'm going to allow you to come in, because that's not really inclusion, right? I mean, so these are some very important things that we need to include. This awareness we need to be able to bring to the organizations, to the leaders, and to the participants that we consult with.
Thought of DEI from this power imbalance aspect.
And that's the reason for that, because our education does not, we don't study all this, right? If you look at most DEI practitioners, they are people like you and me. We came into this field out of passion or by mistake, but we're not really qualified here. People who have come from a gender studies background, people who have come from a sociology background, they understand society, they understand power imbalance, they understand oppression and exclusion, they understand the factors that cause it, they've studied societies where it doesn't occur. These are the people we need to bring in. And there's this friend I really admire. I never met the guy in my life. I know him off LinkedIn. His name is Akshay CM. Akshay CM.
CM.
Yeah, Akshay is somebody that you should bring on your podcast. He comes from a gender studies background. There's another lady, Anupama Kapoor, who also studied. She moved away from, classical management education, and I think she pursued gender studies before coming into this field. These are people who understand exclusion, inclusion from a systemic lens. And I mean, through my association with people like that, I've become aware of these dynamics. But before I didn't know all of this, I was also doing pretty much, shallow DEI work.
Only. And then that's what a lot of people might be just talking about when it comes to DEI. Okay, we have to celebrate Pride Month. That's it.
Yeah, well, there was the organizations that were willing to bring me in, pay me money to run multiple workshops. Clearly, they had commitment. They were giving time, money, and effort there. But now that I'm aware of all of this stuff, what I can do is I can actually ask them, saying, hey, how much do you think these workshops will do? Right? I mean, do you think they'll be able to build a culture where you have shared bathrooms? Or even if you have separate bathrooms, you could have transgender bathrooms. You can have bathrooms for transgender people, and they can walk into the bathroom of the gender they identify with. And will that be okay with the rest of your workforce? Because if you cannot bring that outcome about, then probably it's not very effective what we are doing. So let's talk about what we can do in order to do that. What mindsets do we need to change? Are you willing to bring in? Yeah, absolutely. Are you willing to bring in? Are you willing to create let's say a transgender ERG? And are you willing to implement the things that the transgender ERG tells you to implement? Are you willing to do training? And are you willing to, are you going to be focused only on productivity, or are you going to say, no, we are going to do 40 hours of training around this issue for every employee?
The first time I saw in one of your workshops, I did share with you my experience. And what has happened to me is I've worked with people who are from the LGBTQ plus community. I too was afraid, and I've shared this with you, that the first time I got to know, oh, that person is gay, I wanted to keep my distance. For me, it was not easy. But working with that person, the more I started knowing that person, and somewhere, in my work as a coach, in the organization that I work with, I've also come across people, and just because they are from a certain community now, because life has put them in that situation, they are just used to it. What people are saying, how they've been teased, they cope up with it. But I see that the team members, maybe the team leader, managers, they are aware. So they are treating that employee slightly with care. But not all team members. The team members still might be going out and just teasing or passing on comments, which is not appropriate. And the employee doesn't complain because just used to it. So what you are saying about, doing those sort of at least mandatory trainings and checking the pulse of whether the workforce is actually ready to accept, embrace it, would be a really good step to get into.
Yeah. And not checking whether the workforce is ready, but taking steps to make the workforce ready. I think that's the word, because waiting for the workforce to become ready is delaying inclusion. Making the workforce ready to include people is actually creating a culture of inclusion, creating an awareness about it. And you're right. A lot of us have these misconceptions because we don't have exposure. Like you, I also had the same challenge. I had never met anybody who was from the LGBTQ community, and my attitude only changed after I had had the opportunity to get to know them as individuals, to actually see them apart from the label, right? I mean, you're just viewing that person for one aspect of them. Oh, this person is, gay, and I've never met somebody who's gay. But once you get to know them, you realize that, wow, I mean, this person has so much in common. They're about justice and they're about helping people, and they have the same aspirations. They want to become a coach. So, and then you discover that it doesn't matter. Their life choices are not that important.
In some cases, they are way ahead. Like, the person that I was talking about, initially I was afraid, but when I started to know that person, he, at a young age, his parents found out that, he feels a different way. And obviously, parents thinking about the society, they have to just outcast him. But this guy, at the young age, when he was even in his fifth standard, read the entire Bhagavad Gita, had it memorized.
Wow.
And I know for so many people today who might be watching this, not watching this, but though we are fighting on the basis of religion, they have never read these sacred books. Never.
Exactly. So many people who like to mention these books but have never read them.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. Quite interesting. I mean, there's for sure a lot to discuss, but given the time frames, here's a simple question for you. If not into what you are doing right now, would you still consider getting back to genetics or anything else? If not doing what you're doing now, what would Aman really would love?
My interests haven't changed, Mariadas. My interests have remained the same for, I'd say, about 40, 50 years. I mean, I'm 50 years old today, and my interests have stayed the same. I'll give you an example of when I was a kid, probably 11 or 12 years old. In my CBSE history book, there was a picture of Lothal, a site which is an Indus Valley civilization site, ruins of Lothal. And I was fascinated. What are you talking about? 4,000 years ago, more than 4,000 years ago, there were people built cities. There were civilizations like that. I actually read about that and I was fascinated. And when I was in my, I'm guessing, late 30s, which would have been, over 2.5 decades at least late. After that, I was going to Baroda to a workshop. And in Baroda, I was looking up, that area, and I kind of remembered that Lothal may have been in the area. So I went to Google Maps, I looked, and I realized that Lothal was 2.5 hours away from Baroda. So after I finished the workshop, I asked my contact at the customer's place, and I said, I know that your cab you are giving me is taking me from Baroda to Ahmedabad for my flight. Can I take a detour? Could I go to Lothal and, I'm willing to pay. So he said, okay, let me check. He called up, and he figured that they were okay to, do it at no extra cost because, you can go via that place to Ahmedabad. They said, don't worry, you don't need to pay, we'll manage. So I took the cab from Baroda, out slightly early, went to Lothal, and I spent, some time, significant amount of time, possibly an hour and a half or something, walking about the site, taking pictures, touching bricks that were 5,000 years old, So those passions have stayed with me. I'm interested in history and archaeology even today. I am still, another thing that I want to tell you is when I was in college in Bombay, my uncle who, who was there, he would ask me, दोस्तों के साथ and I said नहीं बात करते हैं and he said कहीं जाते हो activity hobby I said नहीं nothing no hobby just we sit and talk he said बात करना क्या होता है he didn't understand the whole to me you could be trekking you could be building stuff you could be whatever I mean he didn't say all of that what I'm assuming he just couldn't get the concept of what is it to talk to people but that was my hobby then that's my profession now if you ask me, what do I do for a living? I actually talk to people. So my interests have remained the same. I'm still interested in, archaeology, anthropology, human beings, their welfare, their well-being. And if I wasn't doing this, I may have been, I would have liked to be, an archaeologist, probably, digging at sites and teaching history and teaching archaeology to people. That would have been a great career as well. I would have had a whole
Amazing.
lot of fun doing that.
Amazing. And the things that I'm hearing from you for the first time. Quite interesting. Quite interesting. Would like to ask you, your new venture, what is it doing? And is it right now only focused on the people in Portugal, or are you also your services open to people in the rest of the world? Tell us a little bit about what you do currently. How is it helping the world? If possibly someone who's watching or possibly wants to get in touch with you, what could they expect to be working with you?
Thanks, Maridas. I think the venture is not very different from what I was doing in India. It's now just a broader geography. Being based in Portugal actually allows me to offer my services physically, not just in Portugal, but all over the European Union. So, Spain is right next door, and France is next door to that, and Germany is a hop away, and Netherlands and Switzerland and Eastern Europe, so Romania and Lithuania and Hungary and Poland and Ireland, and all of these places are places where I can go and deliver in-person workshops. So if anybody is looking for an experiential way of educating their workforce as opposed to death by PowerPoint, that's something that I can do in person here. Being based here also allows me to offer virtual work to three different regions, four different regions quite comfortably, because the difference in time between India right now is 4.5 hours or 5.5 hours when we're not in daylight saving. So India, the Middle East, all of the European Union, and even the East Coast of the United States, all those time zones I can cover. So I have clients who are, interested in virtual work, who I've done work for while I'm sitting here. I've done work for clients in India. I have tie-ups happening with companies that serve both Europe and America for virtual workshops as well. So I'll be able to sit here and deliver that to them. I have a few coaching clients that are based as far as Australia as well. So some in India, some, in this part of the world, and some in Australia. Australia is the hardest to do because the time difference is about 9 hours. One of us is up at night, either my client or I am up at night in order to have that conversation. But yeah, so anyone who's looking for work that is scientifically informed, like you and I were talking about DEI, anyone who's looking for not shallow DEI work, but deep DEI work that understands systemic reasons for inequality. So anyone who's interested in scientific, leadership development work, not superficial leadership development work, but work that actually understands how leaders are affected by the environment and how can you build leadership in a place where the environment also plays a role. Anybody who's interested in strength psychology based coaching and leadership development programs, anybody who's interested in experiential ed, these are the kind of areas that I specialize in. If you just go to my website, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's very simple. It's www.amanzaidi.com. And, that website has a list of the specialties that I work in, my past clients and testimonials. So anyone who's interested in reaching out and understanding what I do, who's liked it in the past, and and they want to reach out, that's a great place to get in touch with me.
Absolutely brilliant. And one of the questions that I've been asking the former guest also on this podcast is there a possibility that people in my network possibly come together if I invite them? Again, I'm not sure how many people will show, but even it's like two people who want to possibly come in for like of 30 minutes, 40 minutes, sneak peek into what they could expect from you, or possibly have one of the topic that you might want to do for them. So the other guests have also agreed that okay, maybe this is one topic that I would like to cover. In fact, this morning the person I had the podcast recording with, she is like, why just one topic? Let me do all these three. So I'm going to talk about DEI, I'm going to talk about EQ. These are things that I'm passionate about. So don't mind talking about all this topic. Is there a possibility that if we have people interested in possibly joining on a call, would you be interested in doing maybe like a 30 minutes sneak peek into experiential learning, for example?
Most certainly, I would be very, very happy to do it. In fact, as we are speaking, I'm planning to do webinar about maybe an hour or 90 minutes long around why is leadership development currently failing to deliver the results that we want from it. I'm actually doing a webinar soon on that. In fact, one of my friends here in Lisbon, she's been after me saying, this is a webinar you should be doing. So I'm going to take her advice and run one. And I'll
Yes,
be very
please.
happy to run something for your, for your community as well.
Sure, sure. I'm trying to. The intention is through the podcast, add as much value as possible to the people without expecting them to maybe just subscribe to the channel or follow on LinkedIn. That's not the intention. But at least have value. The reason is quite interesting. I never knew about this, but one of my coaches from 3 years ago, he randomly called me the other day and he saw a post I did on Instagram. He's like, hey, you know what? I would like to learn Excel and AI. Would you be interested in doing a session? I had no clue that people are interested and that I should do it. But now that that guy started saying, I was like, okay, maybe there are people who might need it and they don't know whom to reach out. And the trust that they have in me as a coach, maybe I can do it. Why not? But there are certain areas like experiential learning, DEI. I'm not an expert in that. So if possible, request that you or someone who's has that expertise to possibly do a short session, add value to them.
Always happy to do that. You know that, Mariana.
Perfect. Now, people, mentor, movies, books, songs, all have influence on us. But someone who's starting onto managerial journey or a leadership journey, or just like where you were starting as a team lead back then and found a lot of challenges, but someone who wants to get into a leadership role and be a good leader, any sort of book or movie recommendation that you have for them, maybe just one that comes top of the mind.
I can actually name 3 books that I think they should be mandatory reading for anyone who wants to be a good leader, an impactful leader. One is a book called First Break All the Rules by a gentleman called Marcus Buckingham. I think anybody looking to be a good manager of people needs to read that book. Uh, a second book is by a gentleman called Bob Chapman. And if I'm not mistaken, the book is called Everybody Matters. I think that's the name. Give me a moment to confirm. Is it everyone or everybody? Yep, it's called Everybody Matters. And third book is called The No Asshole Rule by a professor called Bob Sutton. And I think these books are necessary not just for people to learn how to become excellent leaders, but also how to build a great culture that allows for more excellent leaders to develop.
Amazing. And I have to admit that on this book, I think I've heard about Marcus Buckingham. Not this book for sure, but never read it. Everybody Matters, and I have to admit that Mr. Robert Sutton has been really subtle with the title of the book.
He was deliberately not subtle. I think when he was, if I am not mistaken, he was asked to consider a different name or change that one word, and he said no, that one word does not convey what I'm trying to convey. There's a difference in what you're suggesting and what this word represents, and so I think that's really, he's on LinkedIn and he's a nice guy. I connected with him and he's very happy to engage. So he looks like he's a all-round good guy, and he has very strong views on why all-round bad guys, also called assholes, should not be a part of the workforce. So yeah. And if you're looking for a TED Talk suggestion, I would also like to add one TED Talk. The TED Talk, which is called the Anti-CEO Playbook. And it's by this gentleman called Hamdi Ulukaya. He's an entrepreneur of, I think, Turkish origin in the USA. And he runs a very popular, one of the brands that he runs is really popular. It's a great brand of yogurt. And that TED Talk is also very interesting. I think anybody who's looking to understand how to be a different leader, an impactful leader, should watch that TED Talk.
I'm going to add this to the description for sure. And obviously, I'll also link your TED Talk.
Yeah. Sure. You can add my TED talk in. And I also did another talk a month and a half ago here in Lisbon, which was around the same topic. Why is current leadership development not working? And I can send you the link to that one also.
I think it's on your LinkedIn as well. Remember lately,
Yes.
that's India, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Listen, this is absolutely brilliant and such a profound conversation. I have just one last question, and you already know about this. In fact, before I ask that question, what has happened is interestingly, some of the guests who have come in early, I asked them, would they consider possibly doing their own podcast or doing their own YouTube channel or possibly just writing a book? Because there's like so much of knowledge in terms of sharing. Obviously, yes, there's workshop and the webinars and the trainings, but if you could just put it all together somewhere, would you consider possibly one of those things?
Most certainly. It's been in my mind, Mariadas, planning a podcast as we speak. I have a little bit of a perfectionism streak, which means that until I get the name right, until I get the format right, I hesitate to begin, and that's what causes delays. I've been advised by people to not do that, to just start. It doesn't need to be perfect, but at least you're going to start and then you can evolve as you go on.
Yes.
So I'm in that little bit of a struggle where I'm saying, okay, I don't have the perfect setting or the background or the equipment or the mic or any of that. But I think, yes, I have been planning to start a podcast.
And little ways that I could help, I'll be more than happy to. There's a lot of research that I've done recently, and wherever I can, personally, I'll help for sure.
Out.
Yes. I'll advise the same thing because I remember my mentor, the person I look up to, my friend, my mentor, coach, Pradeep Varpe. He also did his own podcast, and it took a lot of time to actually script it, get it short and edited and all this thing. I told him one clear thing, and one of the things that I also have in mind is no one cares. There's tons of podcasts out. Honestly, there's tons of podcasts out there, and it's funny. The other day, I asked my wife, "Did you watch the latest episode I uploaded?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm subscribed to your channel." And we are watching a movie in the bedroom, and on YouTube, it's her login. So I just happened to open my channel and watch that video, and I realized she's not subscribed. Yes,
you better not put this bit in your, in this recording.
That's perfectly all right.
Otherwise, she's going to otherwise you.
No, it's perfectly all right. And now she's subscribed because I myself had to subscribe on behalf of her.
So now she gets the alerts.
So I have got one follower for sure. But that's the beauty of her. She is very supportive for sure. And she was also of the same opinion. She gives feedback to me on what I do in terms of the guests. And she also has been looking up to some of the guests, what they're talking. It's been very, really good journey. But yes, please start. If that's on your mind, start. I realize your own friends, sometimes they might not even look at the entire episode. So if it's like 10 minutes, they start 2 minutes. Okay, it was good. Aman was looking good. That's it. I have done it for others also. So when Pradeep Varpe, and I'll say this in a recorded line, when Pradeep Varpe, he did his first episode, I watched the entire thing. The second episode was the entire thing. On the third episode, I said, okay, you know what, 2 minutes into it, and I'm like, yeah, it is good. And he smart that. So he said, okay, which part of the podcast did you like? So I had to actually go back, watch the entire thing, and then come up with the answer. But we'll be more than happy to see you on a podcast and bring a new set of conversation that the world needs to you.
I beg your pardon? I beg your pardon. I didn't quite catch that. What was that?
We'd be more than happy to see your podcast where you bring a lot of conversation which the world needs to you. A different lens altogether. Okay, the last question, and this is the signature question that we have for the podcast, asking for all the guests. You obviously know that in my mind I have that framework called the WALT framework. The first W is writing your will. So I'm going to ask you the same question. If Aman had to write his own will, I'm not trying to scale, but given, for example, if you had a 1 year max, and you know that, hey, in 1 year, these are all the things that I want to achieve for myself, but these are the things I want to do for my family, for my clients, for the people. And when I'm gone, these are the things that I want to give to my people. What will be some of those things?
I have a little bit of a struggle, Mariadas. I think my brain is not wired to look too far in the future. and it's not really wired for that kind of imagination. So I will probably struggle with this a little bit. I think my focus will really be on family, essentially. My focus will be on ensuring that my family will be cared for. So I would like to put together all the resources that they will need. And when I say resources, I don't mean only financial, but social resources as well, right? I would like to speak probably to 7, 8 family members and friends who I will tell them that your responsibility from this year onwards is going to be that you're going to play a guardian's role or a supports role in my child's life, in my family's life. It's going to be your job to check in, to guide, to help, to do that. So in addition to ensuring that there is whatever financial I can leave, also to leave behind a network of people, also to spend time with my family members and to give them, if they're interested, whatever little wisdom and advice that one can offer, saying,
Trying
you
to
know
give
what,
it to wife and a teenage kid,
yeah.
a little difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why I said, nobody's interested really, but whatever one can say, yeah, here are the things that help in life, here are the things that don't. Follow this, you're sorted. So things like that. I think my focus will be, to actually spend time on things like that. I think yeah, I mean, I not particularly beyond this immediate stuff, I may not be too interested in anything else.
Perfectly all right. I'm very happy that you are someone who knows where the priorities are. Family first. Love to give them all the wisdom and values, things that they remember you for in a very loving way. So I did the same experiment with a couple of people, and one of that gentlemen also had something of like, why are you trying to scare me like an LIC agent? I have a long life now. Why are you talking to me about it? And with a lot of uncertainties there. Like you recently shifted to Ahmedabad a month ago or so, and the recent plane crash here 10 minutes ago. So
Yeah.
and I've seen that very closely many times. But this time around, it made me realize what really, okay, maybe I want to live at least like another 20, 50, 100 years. But you'd never know. So,
Yeah, you do.
so if I have whatever time I have, so I know that possibly, even like you said, you would like to talk to, your family and friends that, hey, what, something happens to me, take care of my kid, give them
Yeah.
all this thing. Maybe we should do it right away, prepare for it right away.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, I think I got prepared for uncertainty because of the way my mom's life turned out. She had probably not planned to be a single parent. That was probably not the life she had expected for herself, but that's what happened. And during her, I think I remember during her 40s, she also developed this awareness of uncertainty. And I remember her having those conversations with us saying, hey, if anything happens to me, here are the places you need to go to. Go to this person, tell them, give them this contact number. This is your grandfather's number. Ask them to come pick you up, this, that, And all my conversations with my mom, throughout my years have been around that. There are times when I have felt uncertain, and she has always told me that, look, it doesn't matter, whatever hits, we will, cope with it. You cannot predict what's going to happen. Like
Right.
my sister, she broke her leg when she was young. And she was laid up for quite a long time, I think maybe 6 months or so, in plaster, in bed. And my mom was worried whether she'd be able to walk again or not when she'd broken her leg. And she was thinking, saying, what if she can never walk again? What if she has to be confined to a crutches or wheelchair or whatever? What will I do? And she was sharing this with me. And she said, I imagined that worst case scenario. And I said, okay, if it happens, here are the steps I will take. And I think that helped me also develop that kind of an attitude in life, saying, okay, like you're right. I'd love to live a life which is over 100 years long and healthy and wealthy and wise and everything. But God forbid, if something doesn't work out that way, what will we do? Okay, here's what I'm going to do. If you take up a job thinking you're going to spend 10 years in that career, you come across a horrendous culture or a bad boss, it's different. What do? You take action. You ask yourself, what can I do? I have three options. I can talk to the HR head about my situation. I can talk to my boss directly, saying, hey, you and I are experiencing difficulties. Can we find a way out? If that doesn't work, what will I do? I'll go and meet 7 recruitment consultants. So you take action. I think that is good advice for all of us who are afraid of uncertainty, just to say that, you know what, when uncertainty hits, we will have the resources to do something to survive. And it's okay.
No, no, beautiful. In fact, right at the start, you said something very profound. And I was smiling at that point of time as well, because you said when you go in for some sort of sessions where people are talking about psychological stuff, that this is what you should do, self-help and all this thing, and yet you look at them, okay, where are you in that journey? So I was smiling. The reason for that is because I have started writing down what it would be. So I have a plan. Okay, if something happens to me 3 months, this is the thing. 6 months, this is where I should be at least, or what I would like to achieve. But if something happens to me in a year's time, I'm obviously not thinking much beyond for now, short-term planning for a year. And once I'm closing on that, I know that, okay, for next year, what would I want to do? And in all aspect, maybe leaving behind things for the family in terms of material possession, in terms of so that they are taken care of in this world, but also in terms of what sort of legacy, things like that. Because for me, it helps me to realign myself to a life which is, well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in these times, it's also necessary, because so many people keep talking about uncertainty and all of that stuff. I think it's really important, a very important skill to learn how to cope with, how to mentally deal with that uncertainty, so that you don't become paralyzed by fear or anxiety, and just learn how to say, okay, it's happened now.
Yes.
What are my 3 options?
Wait. We need to be very practical and be prepared. That's one thing I've understood. You need to be prepared for the worst case scenario. One thing that all of us can be certain of, anyone who's alive, one thing that's certain is death, and we have to be okay to talk about it. I see so many people leading a life on their deathbed. They regret saying that I wanted a different life, I didn't live it. I did so many things for the family. XYZ, something happened to me. My parents were not good. Dad was, always beating me up. Teachers were not good. So they're putting the blame on someone else. And that's the kind of life they are living and regretting. I'm trying to think of what could be a life that is, even on my deathbed, I'm like, yeah, I lived it well. No regrets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do take a little time, maybe whenever you can, just 5 minutes or so. At least just put down something. Okay, this is what it could be. If you had to write a will, what could be some of the things?
Sure thing.
No, you don't have to answer, by the way.
I know, I'm just thinking about it. I'm just saying, yeah. I know your request to me is think about it and write down in the future. I started to think where I might start, but yeah. Thank you for that invitation. I'm going to think about it.
Yes, for sure. This has been absolutely brilliant. Is there any last message that I would like to give to anyone who's watching? I'm doubtful that people would have stayed to watch the entire thing, but anyone who possibly would have skipped through towards the end just to say, okay, let me just see what they're talking about. So, for anyone who's still watching, any message from there?
I'm not sure of a message, but I guess my central message to anybody, Maryadas, is what I've always believed. I remember when I was in my teens and early 20s, when I was beginning to develop awareness about the world and our role in it, I used to walk around spouting the following. I would say our purpose on earth, we were put on earth to do good to our fellow man. We were put on earth to do good to our fellow human beings. And that, in a way, has guided my life and my work as well. I have felt drawn towards work and towards activities that are about doing good to our fellow humans. And I have felt myself drawn away from things that do not do good to our fellow human beings. And if you look at the world today, whether it is corporations or whether it is larger society, a lot of our problems come from not embracing that belief. A lot of things that corporations go wrong about, where or politicians or societies go wrong about, is when they lose sight of that central objective. Our purpose on earth is to do good and be of service to our fellow human beings. I mean, that's been the message of some of the greatest persons across history. That was Jesus Christ's message as well. Yeshua said that, and Gandhi said that, and that was the central, that was how they led their lives. That's how they made an impact. And I think if more of us can embrace that teaching, not we shouldn't be following these people only in name. We should actually embrace that central teaching, saying, yeah,
Right.
how can I spend my day, my life, my work being of service to my fellow human beings?
Very true. Very true. And I hope that anyone who's listening to this, if there's one thing that you have to take away, it has to be this: do good to your fellow human beings, regardless of whichever religious background or class or uh, any sort of other discrimination that we have. Regardless of that, do good to someone who is your fellow human being. Look at people as people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. This has been a brilliant, profound conversation that I had with you. And thank you so much once again for agreeing to come onto this podcast, spending a considerable time. And obviously, I'll reach out to you for one of the follow-up sessions where you can talk about any sort of topic that could be of value to people who are genuinely interested. But it's been absolutely brilliant. And thank you so much once again.
Same here, Mariadas. It's been awesome. I've been on a couple of podcasts before, and I really like the format of this one. It's been, it's not a very structured set of, rapid fire questions. It's been an organic, evolving conversation, and I really, really like that. I think I've had a wonderful time conversing with you, and you've allowed me to ramble. I don't know whether that was good or bad, but it was, it felt really, really natural, and I quite like that.
Yes, that's the entire thing. A lot of people, as I said right at the start, people who are actually watching the videos, they have been telling me that it's raw, it's unfiltered, it's not perfect, but that is what they're liking. Because it's not perfect, and they can see that even if when they start, it's going to be the same. So it's perfectly all right. But content is king. That's what people have told me. The guests who come onto the podcast, their story, what message they have, that is what people are taking up. And I would want it to be that as the focus all throughout. It's not about how good the lighting is or the editing is, or always about the message. As you rightly said, and I would just like to end on this. I usually tell my people that if you think of a religion would be following Jesus, following Lord Krishna, following Lord Ram, or following possibly Allah, or following someone. I suggest that rather than following that someone, follow what they said to you. Follow the message. Don't
Yeah,
follow the
absolutely.
messenger. Follow the message.
True. I think you're so right. So many of us have turned the messenger into the focus of the religion, and if they would come back, they would actually do this, saying, "You, the things I told you, you're not doing."
Correct, correct, correct. This has been absolutely brilliant, and thank you so much for anyone who's possibly heard the entire episode or possibly just skipped through towards the end to at least listen to this. Thank you so much for staying with us and listening to this. I will be obviously putting this into two parts. Do watch the entire thing, and if you're new to this channel, stay subscribed. We have a lot of new guests also, who will be coming and sharing their story, their wisdom, and we would be more than happy if you have a story to say. Tell us, share something which would be of value to the world, please DM me. I'll be more than happy to have you featured as one of the guests. Until then, do take care and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.